Good
Well,
afternoon.
good afternoon.
It's all working. The technology works. I'm so happy.
Ah, I just swapped between my work and my personal laptop with one cable. This makes me happy. Then everything works. Took
You
me
know?
like 2 months to get that set up,
Oh my God.
and it was. I can't say I did anything interesting.
Why did it take so long to get it set up?
And I was more. I was buying parts at a time. I was being cheap about it. So
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah.
It's so it should be so simple. I got a total technology thing. I got a new router for our Starlink.
Mhm. Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, and they sent it to me. Like I actually was really impressed. They sent me an email and said, "We detected that there is a potential problem in your router.
Yeah.
And we don't want to wait till it fails. We're just going to send you a brand new one. That's it." Right. And I was like,
Yeah.
cool. Okay. They sent it to me. And in the instructions, they said, just replace the router. Don't do, just hook it up and away you go. And I'm like, oh, cool. Okay. Plug it all in. It all started working. I've got to do my login stuff. Super simple, super easy.
That's
Took,
great.
took 2 minutes. I was like, oh my God,
You
I'm so
know,
happy.
sometimes technology is great. And it just works. I forget things about Starlink. I had a buddy that has them, and it's got a second house in Joshua Tree where you definitely need something like Starlink.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's pretty happy about it.
Yeah, we've got it. So we have this farm project
Mhm.
up in the Sierra foothills. Are you
Okay.
familiar with California at all?
Passingly, in that, California dominates the news in many ways. So, but I mean,
Okay.
I've like been to San Francisco and I've been to LA when I was a kid, probably. But so yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, so we're halfway between ballpark, halfway between the farm between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and we bought a piece of land. It had nothing on it.
Nice. So
And
yeah,
so we're almost 2 years into like having something we can ultimately live on. So
that's great. You
completely
got
different skill
internet.
set needed. It,
It's good though, but it's the same thing. You're engineering solutions.
oh yeah,
Just
totally.
one
Yeah,
of them
yeah.
requires your hands, which is might be better.
It's and I love being out in the woods.
Yeah, that's great.
It's like that's the coolest thing in the world is I can go run in the
Yeah.
woods and it's awesome. Anyway,
So
cool.
anyway, yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this podcast. I
So
really
yeah,
appreciate it. This is awesome. Um, I hit the record button already, so
yeah,
we're good to
no
go.
problem.
So I mentioned that I don't script except for one question.
Yes.
Here is that one question. What's your origin story? How did you get started leading software teams, or if you were leading stuff before then, like how did that play out?
Yeah, I mean, it's I talk about it, I'm like in a certain way, like I kind of fell into it, which is sometimes not the best thing I'd like to admit, but it all kind of happened in my move to New York. So I was in consulting before that, building web applications, websites, things like that. And a buddy of mine from college convinced me to leave Chicago, move to New York, join the startup called Contently as the first employee. And that's what I did. And lo and behold, my buddy was a CTO, but I kind of came in to just take over the engineering, quote unquote, which is
Mm-hmm.
us two. And we hired an engineer soon after that, that kind of stuff. And as the company grew and the team grew, somebody had to take on the role, right? And it kind of started jokingly, like, or half jokingly, I should say, which is like, I got the VP of engineering title. We were probably like 7 people, and I remember telling the CTO, is my buddy Dave Goldberg. I was like, I don't want that title. Like, it just sounds lame. Like, and he's like, no, he's like, you don't understand. We have to look bigger because we're selling business software, right? That's what we're selling, content marketing software. I'm like, all right, whatever. And then as the team grew, it kind of came to this realization. I'm like, oh, like especially when we hired a VP of product, who kind of like became a mentor to me, like a management mentor, and was like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to like take on the management role, the true leadership role of it, right? And it's not just leading the technical side of things. though I was still doing that, of course, it's like leading people, right? Like these are people's careers, some of them was like first job. Some of them definitely not their first job, but like, they just need kind of that support and guidance and things like that. And so I kind of took on the role by default at first. But as time grew on, I ended up realizing I liked it. And the reason for it is like you can just affect more change, right? So it's like you can affect change from a technical side and kind of technical leadership, but part of it is also I had to seed some of that because I believe in hiring people smarter and better than you when you can. And so
Yep.
they kind of took on a lot of that stuff, especially in our data processing side of things. But then on the other side, you could still affect this change. And I also like product and I like design and things like that. And you can just kind of play in that space a lot more and just affect change in a different way. And it's good and bad. I'm not gonna lie. Like some of it is, you're hearing people's worries and things like that, which can be tough at times and stress, especially in the startup world, which is really full of ups and downs. But it's also rewarding when you see people grow and really not just grow at your company when they leave, where you're managing them and they're like all of a sudden, one is like a founder at a company and head of engineering, another one's, kind of done those things. And that's awesome to see. So, and they're at bigger companies like, Facebook and the Shopify's of the world. So I'm like, all right, like I had something there. They did it on their own, of course, but like, maybe I had a little bit of impetus there. So
Very cool. I like that. Um, so you said a couple things there
yeah,
that I'm like, well, back up, because that not everybody says that, right?
yeah,
Um, the first thing is you mentioned the VP of product mentoring you about leadership. What
yeah.
were some of the things that stuck in your head that he said, that you found to be actionable?
It was, it's hard to think about it because like, I mean, we talked so much every day as the head of product and engineering. Like we sat next to each other. We always looked at it as like the product team, product engineering have to work together to make the company go. But it was really like, you know, like I think he was just hearing it from engineers on the team that like they needed some guidance, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. But also like I just saw him do it with the product managers he hired and the designers. And so like, there's part of it like just seeing it in action. Like, this can be kind of typical at startups, right? Like, we're all, on the younger side, the inexperienced side. And like seeing him who's somebody who had experience, I was just modeling it after him. So I didn't even have to like so much him telling me to do it, although I'm sure parts of it were like that, but it was just seeing him do it. I'm like, oh, I should do one-on-ones. Part of it was also like, our CEO, was recommended the classic Andy Grove high output management, those kinds of things. And he was
Right,
kind of
right,
like, like the classic, everybody's probably read it in the management side. And, you kind of realize that and just kind of pushing me and nudging me towards that, I guess. And was probably how I'd say it. Like, I can't think of like anything specific or all that, but it was just like, you know, um, when I see things happening, this is probably one of the things I miss about being in an office is like you just kind of see what's happening around you through like osmosis and you see like, oh, like this is how he's doing them. This is how I'm hearing him talk to them, his product managers and things like that on the side. And I'm like, oh, I should probably be better about that and maybe have that one-on-one close so I can hear real things and get the honest feedback and the honest opinions, things like that. Their honest worries about a startup, things like that. So
right. Yeah, startup life is definitely different than
Mhm.
than bigger established companies. Um,
Yeah,
I've spent most of my career in either startups or smaller sized companies,
yeah,
and you do got to wear more hats, and you got to think
yeah,
more holistically, and you really, I think part of what you're saying is you have to think about how to be responsible for the company's success,
yeah,
and if you're one of 27,000 people at the company, it's hard to feel like you can have that level of impact
yeah,
because you might not even be in the same state as the executive team.
yeah.
So it may be very hard to really significantly, although now that we're remote, yeah, that's totally true. um are you guys remote right now?
Yes, we have a we have a bit of a contingent in New York City, and that's just kind of more just happens naturally. I think there's just people here and kind of targeted some hiring here. But other than that, you know, the the team is predominantly remote, and I'd manage it like it's a remote team, right? From written
Mhm.
communication and being good about those things, documentation, all that kind of stuff. So,
Are there any, what's the word I want? Are there any things that you see that you consistently do that really helps your remote team feel cohesive?
um, yeah, I think it's like little things like I insist on not skipping stand-ups. I believe strongly in turning the video on. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it is like I don't like forcing it on people, and a lot of it's just like setting by example. You just you just do it, and then either people model after, some people don't. If you have an early stand-up, some people are, some people just roll out of bed, and that's fine. If they're working, and I get it, those kinds of things. But I think that's part of it. A lot of it is like one-on-one and just relating to them as a person. I think is part of
Mm-hmm.
it. Just like it's really easy. This is probably like a broader online thing, and I'm sure there's plenty of say in social media side of this, which I will stay out of. But like, there's like a depersonalization when you're remote, and you have to
Right.
kind of like make an effort to like, oh, that person's a person. They have real things. They have a kid. They have complications. They're pet sick. Things like that happen, and just understanding that, just you know in a lot of cases, like I'll speak for myself, like, or I should speak actually more like, if you're like single, things like that, like you're alone most of the day if you're working from home. And like
Right.
the human contact side of it, you're like, you might not have talked to somebody for 3 hours. And so people like it, obviously, I like it at times to sit down and focus on a problem, but then other times I'm like, I need to talk to somebody, those kinds of things. So I think that's like a big part of it. In terms of like rituals, it's maintaining kind of like biweekly engineering full team meeting. We're not the biggest team in the world at about like 10 folks, but like um just doing that to like make sure there's an open communication, like seeing everybody as a team as a whole, those kinds of things. And then the other thing is like if budget allows it, trying to have in person, once or twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of things are usually nice, maybe once a year. That tends to be a budgetary thing, whether it's an all company thing or even just or I tend to like engineering and product together and design like all that kind of cohesive unit is really helpful too. And just like, you know, you can just accomplish a lot of planning and that kind of stuff and get conversations going. And but that would be part of it. So the other thing I also emphasize, sorry, I'll say one more thing, which is
Oh,
like
it's good. No, it's all good. It's good.
having
Yeah.
having conversations in public Slack channels, I think is so key. All right. Like that to me is like the best way to mimic what I miss from like an office setting, which is just like people having conversations around you. It's like, people complain about open offices, but there's this benefit of like you can hear conversations around you
Right.
and nothing's like private. It's like people are just talking about their work, and you'd be like, you might hear somebody talk about some new technique they learned about, or some, they read some blog post about something, some new technology, and you can chime in if you had experience with it, or you could be like, hey, that sounds interesting. I'd like to know more, and that kind of stuff. And so that, but the other one is like, you hear people's problems, right? Developer environment setups, people perpetually have those issues, and like you hear that, you're like, oh, I fixed that, I should have documented, but I fixed that database thing. Let me show you how. And having that, if it's like in a private Slack channel, sure, that's like one thing, but like you just miss that input of other people that might
Right.
be
Right.
looming around. They might not be in the channel live, but that kind of stuff. And then it also just creates a public record, and you can search it and, you know, you know, plug it into AI, I guess, at this point and all that, and just get answers. But that's the other part of it, right? Like that's like the public Slack channel, I think, is a huge aspect of it. And you know, and then mixing it up with personal stuff, share your pet photos, those kinds of things.
Right. Yeah. 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 I think the serendipity of an office,
Yeah. Yeah.
is such a, it, I think that's the high, that's the, what's the word? Serendipity is an asymmetrically high value
Yeah.
experience, right? And
Mhm.
I don't think people really recognize that
Yeah.
office value, um that when they're, you know, on the bandwagon about, you know, I should be able to work from home and everything's fine.
Yeah.
And I think the like the teams that I've had that were fully remote, just like you're talking about, we did a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff to
Yeah.
really get that serendipity to be as fertilized as possible,
Yeah.
you know, because you never knew, you know, when all of a sudden something's going to pop and you'd be like, oh my God,
Yeah.
moment, you know. And I think a lot of people just they don't think about it, that, you know, that there's this moment that's going to happen. You're going to be like, oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like one of those things that's like hard to think about and hard to model, right? Like because it can happen rarely, and it's like, it's probably one of those things humans are terrible at, like rare occurrences. And so like,
Yeah.
like you can predict, you know, getting an issue resolved, that kind of stuff, and like collaborating on the basic stuff, but you can't predict like what an engineer talking to a random salesperson might come up with in a conversation, overhearing, maybe they're sitting in like the lunch area and they overhear salespeople
Yeah.
talking about something, and then the engineer be like, oh, you know what? Like we could put that together. Like it's not that difficult.
Right.
Or
Right.
a products person, like that kind of stuff. And you miss that part of it, right? And that's really hard to recreate. And it's hard to like not really a measurable thing or anything like that. And so it's easy to overlook because it's just like, it, I think you can talk about that kind of asymmetry. It's like it happens rarely, right? Like whereas everything else happens on a consistent
Right.
basis,
Right.
kind of in
Yeah.
the standard work cycle of a team or a day.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you read any of Nicholas Taleb's work? Any of his
I have
books?
not.
You read?
Familiar with some of his stuff, but I haven't read him.
Yeah. So he I read Anti-Fragile, and
Yeah.
he talks about black swan events as a
Hmm.
negative asymmetric event.
Yeah.
But I just read a book. Uh, Total product pitch here. I have no relationship to this guy at all, but it's called The Super Upside Factor.
Yeah.
And I think it's only available in print right now. It's so new. I don't think he's had time to record it for Audible, but it's all
Okay.
about asymmetric beneficial stuff.
Yeah.
And really, and it really got me thinking about different, like looking back over my life, like I think all the time, like I've just been insanely lucky,
Hmm.
because there's been like all these different things that have happened, and I realized that it's been asymmetric benefits of
Yeah.
me doing things. But the way that it works is I try to set myself up on purpose to get as many opportunities as I can. Like, and it's
Yeah.
and I would start doing this a long time ago. Um, but being in the office makes it easy, and
Hmm.
when you're remote, it's much harder
Yeah.
to get that. So you really got to be, um, what's the word I want? You need to be deliberate
Yeah. That's
about
a good
that.
way to think about it.
Yeah, yeah, and
You gotta
just
be delivering a
know,
lot of things too.
yeah,
Communication, writing, those kinds of things become
right,
extremely important.
yeah. I'm a huge, like, I think everything is systems, even when you don't understand
Yeah.
it. And one of these days, I'm going to make a T-shirt that says "It's systems all the way down," because
I'll buy it.
you'll buy it. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you know the minute that I launch it.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things that I've been doing and not really realizing that I had this system set up
Yeah.
that was, oh, when in doubt, go this direction, because
Hmm.
it'll probably get me a better opportunity for an asymmetric win.
Yeah.
You know? And I've been trying to like figure out how to what the pieces are, because I want to teach my kids.
Yeah.
how to do it, right? Why not? Because I use them as guinea pigs all the time.
Yeah.
Um, and one thing that I know that I do is I purposely take risks.
Yeah.
Like I'm very uh if I'm not doing something that's emotionally uncomfortable every day, it bugs
Hmm.
me. Like I start to go, but wait a minute, I've been way too safe for the last week.
Yeah.
And so
I'm doing that right now.
yeah, this is emotionally uncomfortable being on a podcast.
This is the first time.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. So
Win. Um, but yeah, and I'll like I I get nervous every time I'm off in the woods up
yeah.
by our property because we have all the carnivores
Yeah.
and like everybody around us has cameras and
Hmm.
they've all got recent footage of carnivores running around,
Yep.
right? And so I'm always like, oh, this is like their world, not my world, right? I need to
Yeah.
be really aware. Oh, and by the way, you can fall down and get hurt out there also. And when I'm by myself, like I don't have good cell coverage. I have to think
Hmm.
back in my head, oh, something happens. How do I get to signal?
Yeah.
So it's just there's always this thing. Um,
The risk taking is interesting. It's having two kids myself, and now they're pretty small at 2 and 4, but the 4-year-old, of course, is like really developing a personality and
yeah, yeah,
traits and things like that. And I think a lot about it. I mean, the world is changing so much right now, like AI and all that. Not to get like on the AI hype bandwagon, but like it's it does a lot and it's
yep,
impactful, and like education is going to change significantly when like you don't have, they can solve so much for you. And I mean, I leverage it every day. I was leveraging it today to solve some code problems, and I'm just like, how do I prepare a kid for it? How to prepare, like that's our job, right? And
right,
it's got
right,
me thinking about
yeah,
it, and it's been difficult to think about it, but I think that's like the resiliency is probably like the key aspect of it, and like
right,
being comfortable taking risks, knowing
yep,
like
yep,
um you know, it's not the end of the world. It's like it's okay. You can pick yourself back up, and I think about it even kind of myself, right? Like the risk, probably the biggest quote unquote risk I took, but like in hindsight, it was barely a risk. It was like moving out to New York to join a startup that could have failed 6 months later, and that was a very real possibility. Literally, I was, we're gearing up for Christmas, and we're like, I hope there's a company when we come. Of course, the CEO took care of stuff, and everything was good, but like, but in the end, it's like, oh, but I was gonna just what was gonna happen? I was gonna be a software engineer, and the best time to be a software engineer in 2011. Like
right,
I would
right,
have been fine. And
yeah,
like
yeah,
and still been fine. And if I didn't take that risk, maybe I stayed at the old place, but like, you know, I would have never become like a head of engineering and kind of shot up that ladder and
exactly,
in better or worse ways, but like that the uncomfortableness of it, the perpetual uncomfortableness of it kind of kept pushing me. And I think that's the exciting part of it, right? And especially when you look back at it, you're like, oh, I'm glad I did those things. And
exactly, yeah, yeah,
but then you also learn from it. And yeah, I think that's like a big thing. And it's pretty interesting. Like having kids is also like, you know, you probably like shouldn't quit work and family, but like there is like a thinking about like people on my team and like kids, and then like how am I creating the environment for them to excel? And they're obviously excelling in different ways, but
yep,
it's like I find myself thinking, learning things from each, like so I mean, man, I hope nobody on my team hears this because like I'll be like, I'll read like toddler discipline books and things like that, and but like, but it, but you realize like they're just like how to like, you're dealing with like, you know yeah, like toddlers are, they're so like emotionally, I don't even know how to like describe it, but like all over the place, right?
right,
People I
right,
work with, they're not like that at all, of course, but like, but there's like kernels of truth in there of like, oh, like what does it mean when your toddler feels unsafe, and like, and
right,
and there's a different kind of unsafe in the startup world in particular, like is the company going to survive? Those kinds of things. They're always thinking about it, especially like startups tend to be really honest about their runways and things like that when they're in smaller stages.
hmm,
Like we were like, there's a lot of that in Contently that I used to deal with. And I'm like, oh, it's good to think about it and like understand, and empathize with that mentality in a different way. And then you kind of apply it back and forth for better or worse. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure my wife would like me saying that, but
But it's what you're talking about is creating an environment of psychological safety by
yeah,
being transparent, right?
yeah,
To the best of your abilities, and
yeah,
and and people want that truthfulness, right? Your kids want that
hmm
truthfulness, right?
yeah, yeah. They
um
see through everything, so
yeah,
you have
so
to be.
you kind of, yeah, you got to, right?
Hmm.
For my kids, um things that we did that allowed them to get uncomfortable, I started them swimming when they were 5 months old,
Yeah,
because I'm super aquatic. And I mean, for me, it was no brainer, right? Because
yeah,
I love being in the water.
hmm
And I found a school that uh, they teach babies. Like,
yeah,
they start with that, right? And so my kids, we started playing in the waters when they were, yeah, 5 months old, um, and going underwater when they were 5 months old.
hmm
And so
that's great.
we always push those boundaries. Um, and we're in California, so we went to the beach, right?
Of
They
course.
started riding boogie boards when they were like 3 years old, because I'd push them. I got them to go rock climbing. We went
Hmm.
to a climbing gym, and like, it was interesting because I could see they were afraid of heights,
Yeah,
right? But
that's
then
pretty
they would
normal.
be like, "Wait a minute, these other people are," and they just naturally kept pushing their own, like, out of their own comfort zone into their zone of discomfort, and then
Yeah,
all of a sudden they're 4 feet off the ground, you know, and jumping, and like, like having fun, and I'm like, okay, this is working. um and that's kind of been the theme is, okay, what's the thing that feels risky? But to your point about taking that job in New York,
yeah,
right? In hindsight, you look back and you're like, oh, it's actually not that big a deal, you
yeah.
know. Yeah, you could have been a software engineer in the hottest time of the market in New York
Exactly.
City. It wouldn't have been
Yeah,
so bad.
yeah.
And that's
Worst
the
case, I go back to Chicago. Like it's all not so
yeah,
bad. Yeah,
yeah. And there's a huge amount of demand, and you would have had experience that other people didn't have, which is going to
yeah,
make you more valuable, and a better operator inside an organization,
yeah,
because there's stuff that you know how to do from the startup world that people in big companies have, they just don't know how to do it,
yeah.
right? That's the beauty of it. So, and if your people are watching this video, they're going to be like, oh my god, he's a genius.
We'll
I
see.
like this. That's how his head works. It's perfect. You got it all figured out. um you I'm always curious, how do you inspire intrinsic motivation in your people? Do you think about that at all? And I'm
Yeah,
definitely
definitely.
leading the witness, by the way. I totally get it.
Yeah, no, I mean that's like to me the key. I mean, for me, it's like, I tend to look at it. Sometimes I look at it like what inspires and motivation in me, but like trust and autonomy is like a huge part of it, right? And
Hmm.
like trust them to do the job. And when I hire somebody, usually like the first thing I say to them, or like when I start, take on a team that I'm leading, like starting a new job, and you inherit people, of course, that are already there. I'll always tell them like, you know, you're here, like I either hired you to this job or like you're here to do this job, like the job you're doing. And then I also say in a startup role, you're probably gonna do like two other jobs, but leave that aside. Like if that and probably some customer success work, customer service. But like, um, and the reason to say that is like you own these responsibilities. Like if I wanted to micromanage, I would just do it, right? Like if I want to micromanage a coder, I would just code. Like,
Hmm.
like there is like that's what I would do. Like I would love doing, in a certain way. Like I love coding. Uh, but like that's not what I'm here to do, right? Like, or that's not what they're here to do. And so like that to me is like a key aspect of it. And like if that's not motivating, then it's probably not going to work. There's fair to say like people can have different kind of motivations. People have motivations for money. People have, and that's not even necessarily negative. Like people have different situations and all that. But like, you know, but there's like a part of it which is just like, it's like, do you like coding? Like, and I'm
Right,
like very
right.
upfront about it. Like, you're gonna code, in the software, like you're not gonna have, if they're coming from a big company, I'm like, you're not gonna have the build systems available, you know, there might not be as many people to review a pull request, those kinds of things. Like got to get used to that, and like and then a remote, like you might not get the answers to your questions right away, those kinds of things. Just like being comfortable in that, like read code, like the documentation is going to be lacking, because it just takes too much time. Um, those kinds of things, and like and that trust and being like solve the problem, but like and the trust, speaking of like advice I got from that all had a PPO product is like, it's like trust but verify. And I'm sure that's like a common saying in general, but like,
Yep,
I'll
yep,
trust you, but like, I'm still going to review your code, like I'm still going to like talk to you about it. I'm still going to like ask you why are you making this architectural decision, or like, why don't you write up the design? Just not some formal document, just like get your thoughts down on paper instead of just
hmm
like spewing it out of me, like that kind of stuff, just so you can like formalize it and think it through and organize it. And like, and that to me is like, that trust means like and that like giving them the autonomy to solve it themselves and figure out a way to do it and kind of sometimes suffer through the problem is to me like the key to like that motivation, right? And then also like providing the opportunities for it. One of the a lot of times you'll get is like, especially if it like in the JavaScript world, it's like I want to try this new framework or this new tool came out and all this stuff. And it'd be like, to me, it's like just build a proof of concept. Like just go show me code, like prove it out and like why it matters. Because like, there's blog posts written about every new thing, new techniques and all that. And they're great. Like I'm sure they all matter in their problems, but it doesn't mean it works in the problem space we're on or the context we're working in, the legacy
yes,
code we have to deal with, like all this stuff. But like, but that's like a big thing. It's just like, you know, if they're not motivated to put a proof of concept together, then like all right, then like they're probably not that bought in, like
right,
exploring the
right.
technology, those kinds of things. And, we can make a call. It's not just my decision, it's like a call with the, we're going to make that decision with the other leaders in the org and the engineering org, the other folks on the team, you got to get them to buy in too. So
hmm
otherwise, like, you'll be the only one coding it.
Yeah,
And that's not fun sometimes. So
yeah.
well,
You don't
people
want
like
to have
that.
to be. You don't want to have to be the one coding everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Not in a real actual application.
Yeah, definitely.
Just like
Yeah.
yeah, there's there's always more stuff to code than you're gonna have time for, and you're
Yeah.
yeah,
Without a doubt.
yeah. No, that's good. I'm a huge fan of intrinsic motivation
Yeah.
and trying to figure out what is it that and that's one of the biggest reasons for
Yeah.
one-on-ones in my head
Yeah.
is people they started off and they joined, they were like, I want to build red coffee mugs.
Yep.
Great, we need a red coffee mug builder, that's your job, right?
Yeah.
And 2 years in, they're like, I think I might want to do something different.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah, that's like a big key thing is like people change, right? Like
Yeah,
they might be really into the front end and then they start getting into the back end and they're like, oh, this is interesting. For me, it's like, I consider myself a full stack developer, just but like, for me, it's like I really got into infrastructure and that's where I spend most of my time when I get to code is on the infrastructure side. And like that's what I don't know why I like it. It's just something that like I like. I guess it's probably because I realize like, I'm like building a quote unquote product for the team. It's
right,
like
right.
the infrastructure, things like that. So like I think it kind of satisfies that. And it stays out of the way of the main product cycles, like stay out of the main engineering paths. Like I'm just gonna slow them down. But like, like that's the motivation exploring, it's like I'm still coding, but I'm out of the way of the main code paths and those kinds of things. And that's like the motivation I would find. And, and then engineers that get into the back end and that's where they want to go. And you just find the opportunity to be like, all right, here's a problem we need to solve. Here's a book on Terraform. Go at it. We'll talk about, like put something together and those kinds of things. Might be back to back end people like getting into the front end as well. And it goes back and forth. Um, and all those kinds of things. And it's also not even just like the areas of it, it's like the kind of work, right? Like sometimes you're working on like a big feature push and you finally get it out the door and it's like officially live. And then like you just want to take a step back and like fix easy bugs for a little while. Like let me just go through the bug backlog. Like I don't want to deal with anything. I don't want to architect. Like I don't want to think about it. I just want to like plow through this. And because sometimes bug fixing is just like heads down. Like, it's very, it's like a very closed problem often,
Right.
or ideally, I should say. And you're just like, let me solve it, like let me fix those copy issues. I'll fix the text, those kinds of things. So
No, that's yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah,
And
that's
that's
good.
just like an energy thing where you're kind of dealing with it's like maybe that's not motivation as much, but like you're dealing with like the varying levels of energy that people can bring to a problem space
Right,
or to
right.
like their work on a given day.
Well, you're, in a way, because you're letting people have that flexibility. It's a way to combat burnout.
Yeah.
Because they're getting their. I can't remember who. It might have been Simon Sinek, and I'm totally butchering his
Mhm.
quote, but he was talking about how burnout is when you have to do a bunch of work on something that someone else is telling you to do, and you're not excited about it, right?
Yeah.
And the opposite of that is when you're working on stuff that you're telling yourself to do and that you are
Yeah.
excited about it, and how in that second context you can't really burn out, like you can get
So,
tired, but yeah.
so you bring up an interesting thing, right? This because I do think this comes up, and this definitely came up like say like like for a while, like I was building marketing software, right? Like engineers aren't in content marketing, right? Like, some are fine, but like, we would attract people through like the writing side of things, really enough on the engineering side. But like, you know, and that's like to me becomes a framing problem, right? Like, all right, like,
Mm-hmm.
you may not be interested in, you know, helping, a marketer create better copy or whatever, write better articles for their blog and those kinds of things or their publications. But it's an interesting problem? Creating a text editor with inline commenting and highlighting text and those kinds of things. Like that's a technical problem that's interesting. Yes, it's solving a real world problem, obviously. And I'm always frank with people. I'm like, we have to solve real problem because we like a paycheck, right? Like those kinds of
Right,
things. Like
right.
the company's got to make money, right? Like we have to solve real problems. We can't just like refactor our code all day as much as I would love doing that. But like, so that kind of aspect of it, so it becomes a framing thing, right? Like, oh, it's like this is a complex problem, a complex technical problem. How can we break it down and solve it then? And that was a very real thing we had to do. That was like, one of the more interesting things we would do. But then sometimes it's also like, yeah, we just gotta like generate some basic reporting, for the customer. Those guys, you
Right,
just gotta
right.
plow through it. And the way I frame that is just like you're a software engineer, like engineer your way out of the problem. If it's a lot of manual work, like do it a couple times manually and then like build your own solution, right? Like without a product manager, those kinds of things. Like you can solve that problem, right? Like, and put it together and those kinds of things. And like, oh, you're like, one of the things I remember is like I was like sick of like I'm, I'm not the biggest fan of like doing front end code, those kinds of things, but like I just got frustrated that like, I like couldn't put a basic form together. And so it's like, all right, I worked with like front engineer and be like, can you build me a component library? This is like before like story years and years ago. And this is like a reasonable component library and this is like a Rails application. And I'm like, I'll put in the backend Rails generators for it or whatever we were doing for it. And it was just like, great. Now I can put pages together in like no time, which is like very Rails philosophy too. But like,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing and be like, all right, I was sick of like writing these tags all the time and things would change and the styles would never look right. Like, let's just componentize our library and those kinds of things. We just call it component library, those kinds of things. And like, um, it was good to see that, it's like that to me is like, all right, I'm sick of this problem. I'm going to build my own solution to it. So I don't have to deal with it anymore. I can solve other
Right.
problems. So, um, that ends up being part of it, right? Like, big thing. For me, it's yeah. Anyways, I have plenty of things that of doing that. That's usually what my coding involves today is like solving my own problem. Like I'm sick of generating this report for somebody. All right, let's just find a solution to generate reports. So
Well, that's a good driver, you've got that
mhm.
intrinsic thing going on there, so that totally makes sense,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I like it, that's good.
so, yeah,
um
that's why it's
I'm super curious. You mentioned get earlier. One of the things you mentioned was getting executives to pay for something, like getting your whole team together. What is that
mhm.
process like?
It's just working with whoever is in charge of the money, honestly. So like, in terms of like reporting, I'm either reporting to a CTO typically or in my current spot, like a CEO. And usually they get it. Like, nobody's ever been like, I don't see the value in us meeting in person. Like, no, like nobody, I don't know if anybody would say that. Like, and so it's really just looking at the state of the company and where things are financially, and then like finding a time that's logical to do it, which, is one of those things like having kids now, like that's more difficult for me.
Right.
And like, it's like gonna convince them all to come to where I'm at. And so that ends up being part of it, and just being comfortable, like, all right, like, can we put this together and execute on it, and just like, what does the budget look like, those kinds of things. It's just like a straight up budgeting thing more than anything else. You never need like the buy-in for like the motivation to do it, or like we should do it, or it's more like, can we pull it off, and can you get schedules to align, from an engineering side, like, you know everybody of course is on the team is important, but they're like certain, like, probably like the more experience or leaders on the team, like you want there, because like you do want to, like, it can't just be about like socializing, although there is that aspect of it, like going out for
Right.
dinner, those things like that, going out for lunch, but like, having like a set agenda of like, we want to accomplish these things. Like we have these pressing problems, like a migration of a legacy system that we want to deprecate, right? And
Right.
finally move off the migration, right? Like it's like thing I believe strongly. Like you gotta finish migrations, otherwise you have two problems. You have like, you're better off not starting it. And like planning that out, like let's just sit there and talk about it, or like let's talk about, like, whatever it is, like whatever is kind of bothering the team, like, hey, our pipeline's too slow, like, can we just sit down and like work together in person, like those things that naturally make sense in person. Like if you have those kind of sets of problems, like it at least means it's like focused, and
Hmm.
it's not like,
Yep.
oh, we're all coming in and kumbaya and all that, which is of course nice and part of it, but like you gotta like solve a real problem, and like, or like talk about it, and make, get, you know, talk about it, put it like business value, company value, but like team value out of it. We put it that way. So,
Right. Right. Okay. Good. Good. No,
uh,
that totally makes sense. I'm always
yeah.
curious about, because I hear so many different folks in roles like yours with
Yeah.
completely different um, abilities to communicate with their executives,
Mhm.
um, and B, because of that they have different systems,
Yeah.
and I'm always curious to hear what their system is to go from, oh, I want to invest in this thing because it'll make my people more productive, going from
Yeah.
that idea to, here's the check the CTO has just cut, or
Yeah.
whatever, right? And you're good to go. Um, yeah, I'm always curious about how that, because it seems like that is the ability to make that work has a very high impact on how happy your people are.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember like at a company where you like a lot of people just hadn't met each other in person and like got out together, and they're just like, oh, and you realize also that it's just it's like surprising too. You realize like people are taller or shorter than you thought. But you're like, oh, you look way taller on Zoom, or you look way short, or like, it's like weird things like that. I don't know, it just like reminds me of it. Or like that one guy, like I didn't even know he had a ponytail the whole time, and like did not know he had long hair. It was
Oh
just
my
hit
god,
because he
that's
always
too
had it
funny.
tied back, and he always wore a hat. And it's just like, which makes sense. He's keeping everything pushed back. And so it's like, what? Like, how did that like never come up? And, like, it's just like because you never see the side of a person. It's like it's so crazy to think about it, but like,
Right. Right.
you never see the profile, and you're like, I never knew. I wasn't the only one. Like multiple people were like, whoa. So like it, you know, that is talking about like weird things that happen from that, but like
That's
serendipitous thing. Yeah, that was like probably my most amusing like meeting somebody in person story after like
yeah,
working with
that's
them remotely
funny.
for a year.
That's one of those. I wonder if people feel, and maybe this is a pattern you noticed. After you do those, do people communicate differently?
Yeah, I would say so. They're they're they cure it more often is where I'd put it. I never had
Mm,
like issues like people like being, rude or anything with the remote communication, that kind of stuff. Like people are, it's still a work environment. People are still kind and thoughtful for the most part, usually. But there's just more like camaraderie, right? Like they're just like, you know, talking about other stuff, or like, they might have connected on some hobby that they might share with somebody else, like whatever it is, woodworking, pets, all that kind of stuff people have to do. Me trying to take up gardening now in the house with the house, those kinds of things, and like, like you kind of see that kind of stuff going on. One of the things I I would always keep an eye on with like teams and like I never like officially kept like numbers on it, but like so it was very, I'm always like there's like certain things I'm like reluctant to like keep numbers on in terms of like metrics and all that, but like, because everything's like a as like a proxy for health of a team. But one thing I'd always
Right.
look at is like, what's the chatter like in a Slack channel for like a pod, right? Like a team within the company. And like if there's a lot going on, they usually meant that team was shipping, they were communicating a lot. It didn't even have to always be technical stuff. They had like a bond in a different way, because like you'd see chatter might be about something else. And like the team was humming, right? Like product and engineering were working together, designer, like they were all aligned and if they weren't, like they were gonna solve it. Like you just trusted it. You're like, they're gonna solve the problems. I'm not worried about it. And like
Right.
it's
Right.
kind of nice. You can be kind of hands off with them and just like see what's going on, and just make sure they're like moving in the right direction for the most part. And then you see like the other ones that have just like dead Slack channels, and you're just like, oh, it's a bad sign. And then you realize like, oh, that team's not shipping that much. Like what's going on? And they're just not talking and they're not communicating. And then now you like know what's going on. Well, now I'm sorry, like you don't know what's going on at that point, but now you know like, oh, I need to spend time with that and look into that, like what's going on there. And so that's like a, probably like an interesting thing to like take a look at and see like the health of a team and kind of like a little bit of a tangent there from like after meeting in person, but that is like usually something I tend to keep an eye on. Like, you know, is there chatter going on within this team, within this pod, within kind of a group? So,
I like that as a early warning signal.
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's um
Yeah, like I'd be reluctant to like crack the number and measure it week over week, and you'd probably lose your mind, and
right, right,
you'd
exactly. No,
probably like scare folks on your team. I'm
right,
always like reluctant to even say that because I feel like he's like looking at how many messages we're sending.
right,
But like it's more like it's not like you're just like always keeping an eye on things, right? Like you're just like looking for signals, and like that's really what it's about. And like that's just a signal that sometimes hooks at something, sometimes it doesn't. You just realize half the team happened to go on vacation at the end of August. You're like, oh, all right, that's what happened.
right,
Like
right.
whatever it is, or like, so it's like sometimes it's that simple.
And if you're focused on helping your team be happy and operate
Mhm.
better,
Yeah.
that social cohesion, you're actually getting a really valuable signal there, right? That
Yeah.
A, they're socially together working really well, or B, they're not.
Yeah.
And I think in engineering, we forget that humans need to communicate,
Yeah.
and if we're not communicating, then to your point, maybe we're not shipping like we should be, you know
Yeah.
and
It's like,
that's a yeah and that's a problem. I tended to also, I focus on a lot on um, getting shy people on the teams to be
yeah.
consistent contributors.
Mhm.
And because I had this started off as a complete guess, like
Yeah.
hypothesis that the shy people were actually quite smart, and that
Mhm.
they're that there were things that we might have done badly, that if they had been speaking up, we wouldn't have done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I started really focusing on getting on building an environment of psychological safety,
Yeah.
specifically so I can get them to speak more, right?
Yeah.
Because the people that are more extroverted, they're always dropping their 2 cents, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely. I mean,
and
I relate to that. Oh, sorry, go on.
yeah, no, so for me, like one of my main focuses was always, how do I get the shy people to feel comfortable with me, number first of all in the one-on-ones, right? Like how do we
Yeah.
get that to work well? Because
Yeah.
so I can hear where they want to go, what they want to do, but then
Mhm.
also, how can I, and this is one of those, you got to be patient because you're not going to get them to
Mhm.
change in 5 minutes. But how do I, or I don't know how to get them to change in 5 minutes. Let's put it that way. There may be a
Yeah.
magic wand out there that I haven't found yet, but
Yeah.
it's getting them to speak up in the meetings.
Yeah.
And when that happens, man, it's a game changer.
It's like tough. So I mean, so I was gonna say, like, I relate to like, I'm actually like a shy person, and and all that kind of stuff. But like, yeah, I mean, a lot of it to me is like, you know, breaking down the barriers like in a one-on-one, right? Like that's like the first
Hmm.
step of it. Um, But the other part of it that hit me, and I remember this from like reading, it's like a Peter Drucker thing. I think there's like like a Harvard Business Review, like 10 best things. Like, like see him in the airport, and I grabbed one years ago. And I remember reading with the Peter Drucker thing, and he talks about like um, the ways people communicate, and I think that's the other aspect of it. Like, not everybody communicates verbally well. Some people just communicate with
Sure.
writing. Some people communicate with drawing. Like they're more like they think that way. And I realize like that ends up being part of it. And like because like if everything is like verbal, and I think this can happen in the business world, like then the people that talk the most dominate, right? Like and they
Right.
can and because they're just good at it, right? And they're like, I like think about it. I'm like, I'm not the one of the reasons I was nervous about this, like I don't consider myself a good on my feet thinker. Um, but like, like I like sitting down and like writing my thoughts down and then trying to organize it and then like doing that kind of stuff creates like a different approach and I think that's like the other way of like allowing people to communicate that way as well. And it's like one
Hmm.
thing I've been moving more and more towards, part of it by setting by example, and part of also like it creates documentation. But like we've, done architecture decision records in multiple places now. And the idea there is like somebody tells me they got a great idea. I'm like, cool, like write one up, and we can talk about it. Or somebody's like not comfortable talking about it in a meeting, but they can like write down, focused thought and arguments and things like that in a document, right? And that's just a different way to communicate. And so I think
Right.
there's like that's like the aspect of like, you know, shyness that like, that it's like creating a comfortable environment. You talk about like a
Hmm.
psychological safety there, but like that's like the other aspect of like they just might communicate differently, and that's something that I try to be more and more cognizant of, and I think becomes more and more important. I have seen in the remote world, but even in like in person world, I think that's extremely important as well. And but it also like allows asynchronous and like it's not like people are like sit down and focus. They're not getting interrupted for meetings and things like that. It kind of allows for a different world like that, but that's like I think an aspect of shyness that you can kind of approach it from a different way than
Hmm.
just like creating comfort to like speak up, which is just tough sometimes, and it's tough with big groups, and it's tough if you're not that experienced. So we don't have to get into like imposter syndrome, which definitely exists,
Yeah.
and like which is really exists for everybody, I'm convinced, but some people just admit to it, and yeah, that kind of aspect of it. So that's like another way I've probably approached it is try to like let them communicate different ways.
I like that. I'm gonna steal that. Yeah.
Please do. I stole it from Peter Drucker. So
Okay. Yeah. No,
we
that's
all
because
no
yeah,
ideas original. We steal them all. So
yeah. Everything is a recomplet. Yeah. That's a really good yeah. That's a really good way of thinking about it. Yeah. Um, I used to have really really bad social anxiety,
mhm.
and I figured out a system to reverse it because I
Yeah.
the aha that I had was that it was and I didn't have this to begin with. In leading teams actually was one of the reasons that I was like, oh, I got to do
Mhm.
something about this. Um, was I didn't have a biological problem. I had a mental model, and a skills and a practice problem.
Mhm.
It's like not knowing how to swim, right?
Mhm.
And so I started I started practicing like in little tiny increments to get slightly uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and basically just did a whole bunch of habit stacking, like the tiny habits model, BJ Fogg's
Mhm.
tiny habits model. And now I like public speaking
Now you run
and
a podcast.
and doing podcasts. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, and by the way, this takes time. Like I
Yeah.
was, I was not able to get this done in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It took years, and um, in retrospect, it also this is one of those things that had a asymmetric win.
Mhm.
Getting comfortable talking with strangers, all kinds of doors opened up that would never have opened up otherwise.
Yeah.
Because you like I would go talk to a stranger, and that turned into getting a job offer.
Yeah.
That I would never have done previously.
Yeah. I've like never regretted a meetup that I've gone to or anything like
Right.
that. And I've,
Yeah.
I'll be on the fence. I'll be like, I'm too tired. Or like, I don't want to like, I don't know anybody there. And you're just like, got to make small talk. And in the end, it's always been good. Like I've
Yeah.
always been like, oh, I'm glad I did that. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm glad I
Yeah.
just went to it. And it just got me out of my shell, changed up a routine, met somebody, met people. So then even if nothing comes out of it, it's just, you just get to know people and you get a good advice or whatever it is.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's always good. But
Yeah.
reminded me that I'm probably overdue for that. So
Yeah. We need more
to find
networking
more.
events again, because like they used to have
Yeah.
them, pre-COVID, there was a ton of networking events around here.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and like I could have gone to 2 networking events every day of the week at least,
Yeah.
um, pretty easily. Now, um, there's, I think everything is online.
Yeah.
It's really hard to find. And I haven't even heard. Okay, so quarterly, I know there's a group that does them that's
Hmm.
local, but it's not tech. It's like
Yeah.
random, like a room full
So
of
probably
people,
good.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a it's a shift, right? After COVID,
Yeah.
everybody's behavior totally changed.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're in New York City. I think they've come back and they're around
Oh,
things
good.
like that. But for me, it's like I think had kids in that period, and so like now, just like time wise, it's like
Yeah, yeah.
where
Kids
do I want to
change your
spend
game.
my free time?
Yeah,
Yeah, you just
yeah.
like is your free time drops to this, and you realize life before kids. You're like, why did I ever think I was busy before kids?
Right,
All I
right.
had was
Yeah.
time. All I had was time there. Like, should have changed the world. What was I doing?
uh,
So,
well, here's the good news. When they're like in their early 20s,
yeah,
you'll get some time back.
it's fair.
That's the
I know, but then I'll be sad they're gone.
you'll be
So
well. That's yeah. That is the flip side, right? It's
that's
like
what. Yeah,
one of my kids is still local, and so
it's good.
we do weekly dinners. Like
That's great.
I'm like, let's go have sushi, and that. So that's real
Hmm.
easy. The other one's down in San Diego, so I don't get to hang out with him as
Yeah,
often. But I talk to him on the phone probably 3 or 4 times a week
yeah,
just to catch up. I'm like,
it's
what's going
great.
on? What's the current thing you're struggling with?
Hmm.
Here's what's going on at the property. I'd love to have you come up and help me because we want to build some stuff.
some,
um,
some brush to clear.
yeah. Well, the kids they both like working with power tools.
Yeah, who doesn't?
So I'm like, okay, great. This is what we're gonna do, and like they both, um, they did all the framing for the roof on this tiny cabin that we built.
Yeah.
I just guided them. I was like, here's what needs to be done. They were up there, doing stuff and down grabbing a skill saw, and like it was awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it was
great.
super fun. Yeah, you can look forward to that. Yeah,
Yeah, trying to enjoy the moments now, then definitely look forward.
yeah, yeah. It's super fun. This has been super cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, it's you don't seem like you're nervous at all. You're like, or that's your first time. You know, you're
Yeah,
natural
no,
for
it's
this.
just all right. Maybe
Yeah, and
maybe I'll look for some more.
perfect. Good
Yeah.
job. Okay, cool. Well, thank you again for the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you as well. I enjoyed this as well. I'm really good
good,
talking about
cool.
all this. Might need to hit you up for some father advice one day, but yeah.
Okay, happy to talk about kids anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
They're quite fun.
Yeah,
I've had a
definitely.
blast with mine. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank
But
you
yeah,
again,
well,
and have an awesome evening.
thanks. You too.
Will do. Thanks. We'll see you
Appreciate
later.
it. Bye.
Bye.